Hey everyone, this is The Villain's Demand. I'm JVD, bringing you another comic book review over Amazing Spider-Man Carnage, issues 359 through 363. As much as I like Carnage, this debut story for the character, is not as good as the debut story for Venom, due to, I guess, the nature of the symbiote and how it had a connection to Pete and how Eddie had a connection to Pete, and then, their combined hatred made for a really good story, especially the torment he was able to put Spider-Man through. Carnage does not get that with Pete. He's literally chaos personified, and all he does is live to murder. Though he has a cool look, there's a really good spot in the book where he's described as being black and blood. Not black and red. That comes much later in the story, and that's a really cool way to describe the character. I would really like to see a really good CGI version of Carnage now that we've seen one with Venom, and just to see how the symbiote looks with this blood red color to it. Carnage is a madman, unlike Eddie Brock. Eddie Brock, as Venom, really cares about killing innocents, despite he will kill innocents if it's to protect or get to something more important. Carnage doesn't. He is completely opposite of Venom. Where Eddie Brock is a journalist and he likes to uphold the word and the truth, and Carnage is not. He's completely chaotic. He has no sense for law and morals, and all he wants to do is make people free of those through murder, mayhem, killing. And that is what he has set out to do once he's broke free from prison. You learn in this book that Carnage has a little bit more different ability set than a Venom symbiote. I guess we should note, even though this is 5 issues, the first 2 issues have nothing to do with Carnage. There's just a peek of him in the very first 2 issues here and there. The first 2 issues, you've kind of got the uneasy team up between Cardiac and Spider-Man again. So you could skip those if you want and just read 361, which is the first appearance of Carnage, and then 62 and 363 to follow. But I do recommend reading the first 2 issues. Like I said, I've always liked Cardiac. You get his origin story in issue 360, and though he's not there to fight Carnage in any of this. The first 2 stories, the first 2 issues are good because there's an ongoing theme there with Cardiac and Spider-Man and these uneasy alliances. And maybe reading these now, and it's not something I should have, I wouldn't have picked up when I was younger, is Cardiac is actually the perfect partner in a sense for the Punisher, because he's looking to take down crime, and even those who are willing to hurt people through corporate means, and the Punisher is looking to take on the mob. There's a lot that's tied together in that. You really see that when Cardiac's around, and that's also kind of something that's really not prevalent in more modern comics, especially with Spider-Man. You would already see Spider-Man running around taking down goons, and it was almost like a story arc thing. At least that happened once. And in modern books, you don't see that, but almost all these older Spider-Man books, it's like in every story arc, and it's really good because that's what Spider-Man is. He's a street-level character, and that's just something you should commonly see, even if it's, goons or thugs or gangsters moving drugs or anything of the sort, do the criminal underworld. That should at least be in the story arc at least once, even if it's just, a panel or 2. I mean, it's very important to the character, and it always seems like he's kind of lost his roots in modern times with that, because he's always teaming up with the Fantastic Four, and he's been an Avenger here for like the last 14 years, and it's kind of like he's really got away from that in the books. But anyways, I'll kind of get to spoilers here with the book. Like I said, 359, you see Carnage kill a man in the prison escape, and then 360, they try to give you an idea of just how crazy he is. He goes as a guy, Gunny Stein, and he is simply killed because Carnage looked through his phone book, and that was a very stupid name that he found. That's how crazy Carnage is. And just, it was just fun to him. But these first 2 books, Cardiac is still taking on his war on corporate crime. Like I said, him and Pete keep running into each other. He's actually using the photos that Peter's taking for the Daily Bugle as Spider-Man to track down criminal whereabouts tied to corporations. And eventually, after ties from Albert Buckner wind up leading to a Joe Faulkner at Stain Internationals, and it's basically tied to a kid that's died from a doll, and apparently that was tied to some nerve gas, which was tied to missiles being traded, which were done technically legally, but the manufacturing of the missiles there is illegal. That's kind of what brought them together. But like I said, you get Cardiac's origin here, and it's pretty interesting. He's kind of got the typical I've dealt with tragedy to become a hero, but he's not really a hero. He's an anti-hero. Like I said, he's much like the Punisher. He's not afraid of killing people that are in his way, as long as whatever he stops will, protect innocent people. And you find out that his brother died of an incurable disease when he was young, and so he spent all of his time dedicated to science and learning medicine, just so he could, build a corporation and try to save people from what his brother went through. Well, he bought a corporation that created this miracle cure that would have saved his brother, only to find out that they've had this made forever, but they wanted to wait till their market. So he is all about taking down corporate greed, and it's something that if you think about, is almost like a modern day thing. So there's a lot of stuff here in these 300 run of Spider-Man, these issues here, that you kind of see which kind of plays out today, and a lot of conspiracy theorists actually thinks what happens in our country. So it's kind of interesting. It's like unknown foreshadowing back in the early 90s, and here we are, 20 some odd years later, and a lot of people believe that's actually going on. So it's really cool foreshadowing. But like I said, these first two issues are just Cardiac. You could skip them and just start at 361. And Carnage has been on a brutal killing spree when all this starts for a week. And you find out that he's actually laid low for some time before all this has started. And he's leaving the name Carnage in blood. And he is murdering people viciously, like almost like Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat, because there's a scene where people talk about like where the ribs ripped out, the spine was ripped from the back with the head, and they're trying to write him and be descriptive of his murders to make him just sound like he is purely brutal, and there's no remorse, and that he is literally chaos personified. But anyways, Pete starts trying to find info on him, and he comes to an abandoned house, and he thinks he's hearing a kid talk. And it just shows you the psychotic side of Carnage. Later on in the book, as Venom puts it, he's a sociopath. But he's talking to Binky the bear, and he's nude. And he's just sitting around a fire. And he's talking in a kiddish voice. Well, anyways, that's when him and Spider-Man first throw down. There's something that's cool, because Spider-Man hits him with webbing in the face, because that's a Spider-Man tactic. Because his webbing's so strong, it's hard to break free. And he uses the symbiote around his head to tendril around the webbing and actually grabs Spider-Man and throw him around, which is something Venom never done. And then we get the classic, he makes his hand into an axe and then actually breaks it from his hand and throws it. And Spider-Man, thinking that, maybe it's going to be like Venom, and the symbiote will eventually wear itself thin and it'll just be Carnage. The symbiote actually, when it stays away, it quickly deteriorates. As he puts it, the molecular integrity, when separated, cannot hold. So as soon as the symbiote leaves him, pieces of it, they crumble to dust. And then as these cops barge in, you see him actually shoot the bladed fingertips out of his hand, and Carnage kills a cop with them. So that's pretty cool. So you're already getting a lot of very archaic weaponry here from Carnage to really separate him from Venom. And this is where Pete goes to talk to Mary Jane to say he has no choice but to get Venom. So he takes the Human Torch with him, and obviously it's not Sapphire, because symbiotes have it's a part of their weakness. And him and Pete have this really cool fight, where Johnny's surrounded him by fire, because Venom is still on the island that Spider-Man left him on. We thought he'd finally killed Spider-Man. He sends a tendril through his sand, because that's kind of like his big cool move, and actually grabs Johnny and pulls him underwater where he cannot ignite. So he finds a way to finish him off real quickly, and he has to wind up going Nova Blast just to break free and just to get Venom's attention so Spider-Man can escape. So that's really cool. So anyways, Spider-Man finally gets to the point where he's telling Venom what's going on, that you have an offspring, that, you know, this guy named Carnage is killing innocents, and that's all it took, the word killing innocents. So anyways, while Venom and Spider-Man return back to New York and Johnny Goes gets Fantastic Four, they're trying to track Carnage, and, you know, Spider-Man cannot sense Carnage because, much like Venom, his spider sense doesn't work, but the symbiote can sense its offspring. So you don't ever learn that Carnage can sense Venom, but here Venom can sense Carnage. So they wind up brawling with Carnage, and you find out that he is much stronger than Venom and Spider-Man combined during their fight. And just to add to the maniacalness of Carnage, to escape, he actually busts through the floor to the room below, takes a baby and flings it out the window. So like I said, they're really doing all they can here to just show you how much of a maniacal serial killer that Carnage is. Eventually he goes after J. Jonah Jameson, just like any typical serial killer, like in, you know, like Law and Order SVU or, you know, NCIS. He's leaving clues to his next victim for the heroes to find. Well, anyways, once he gets J. Jonah Jameson, there's a big fight. And this fight goes from everywhere from a rock concert, because you find out that Carnage is very into like heavy metal, and he's, you know, against society. And they're going to go save Jonah Jameson. You're seeing some really cool stuff here from Carnage. He's actually using a long tendril as a whip and a noose to grab Venom by and just sling him around into everything that he can. And eventually the tendrils that Carnage has, as they're fighting, they break down into a subway. Carnage actually uses his tendrils to enter the Venom symbiote and shred it from Eddie Brock, and it really seems to hurt him. So there's another cool power that Carnage is displaying that Venom doesn't know about. And they even throw Carnage into the third rail of a subway, which is electrical, and thousands of volts go through Carnage, and it doesn't even phase him. Well, and eventually Carnage had baited them by keeping Jonah alive. They go to fight Jonah again, and basically you get some death by stereo a la the Lost Boys, where as Spider-Man uses the sound system to take down Venom and Carnage. And this is where you see that Venom actually has built up some resistance to sonics, and he is able to withstand the sound of the speakers where it immobilizes Carnage. And then when Venom's like, okay, you can stop, Pete's like, no, knows he needs to finish off Venom. And Venom fights through and attacks and is going to kill him until Reed Richards shows up with a sonic blaster. And the Fantastic Four take him out. And Venom and Carnage are captured. So, it's really good. There's a really good cliffhanger at the end. Two older people, adult people, they fly to New York. And they're talking about how their life is going to change, how they're going to change the lives of people when they meet them, starting with him. And they show a picture of Peter Parker. You know, so there's a little cliffhanger for the future of Amazing Spider-Man. But like I said, the story's good, but it's not as good as the original Venom stuff. Because like I said, there's not that hatred there that Eddie Brock and the symbiote have for Pete. And Carnage is just kind of there. He's just your typical villain, but on a very more chaotic level. I mean, he is literally, he's not Scorpion, he's not Rhino, he's not a villain out to, you know, get revenge on Spider-Man or just get rich by ripping off banks, breaking down the vaults. He's not the Kingpin doing crime, you know, setting up drugs, prostitution rings. He's just a maniacal serial killer now with superpowers. So like I said, you don't get that rivalry that Venom and Spider-Man have. But Carnage is a cool character. He's actually, you know, he's uber popular. Fans love him. And he only gets more chaotic as his story continues, which eventually I'll cover. But like I said, if you read these, you can skip the first two issues. They've only got a couple panels of Carnage in each one. And then start at 361, read 362, 363. But I'm JVD for the Villains Man. This has been my review for Amazing Spider-Man Carnage. Keep reading, guys.